Blanton stoppers have been one of bourbon's biggest collectible gimmicks over the last decade or so. But what if I told you there's a brand new bourbon launching this September that has its own collectible twist, and it might just be a little bit cheaper to chase? Let's talk about it. Hey y'all, welcome back. My name is Brandon Spinner, the Whiskey Weatherman, and you have stormed yourself into the Whiskey Weather YouTube channel, the one channel where the forecast is always pouring. Now, before we jump into the full review, I'm building a whiskey community full of amazing folks just like yourself who love great pours and honest reviews. So if that sounds like your jam, I'd love to have you aboard. Hit that subscribe button below and let's keep that storm rolling. Today's Pourcast is this brand new release from Old Louisville Whiskey Company, their Kentucky series, Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Now, as you see on the bottle, they all have different letters in blue, which if you collect the full set, spell out the word Kentucky. And this is not much different than trying to collect all those Blanton's toppers. However, this might be a little bit cheaper for you, and we'll get into why here in just a little bit. This release is a blend of 11 different barrels that were distilled at Bardstown Bourbon Company in November of 2016 and July of 2017. So for all intents and purposes, this is an 8-year-old bourbon. Now, for some perspective, Bardstown Bourbon Company didn't open their doors until 2016, and the first whiskey off their still wasn't until September of that year. So the November distill, which is inside this blend, is some of the oldest bourbon ever distilled from Bardstown Bourbon Company to hit the market. This is bottled right at 100 proof and is a familiar mash bill of 78% corn, 10% rye, and 12% malted barley. Now, Old Louisville is usually putting out some great whiskey, but the one knock on it is it can be slightly expensive. Their single barrels and their blends tend to be over $100. Not this. This is going to be much more affordable, checking in with an MSRP right at $59.99. For perspective, Blanton's new MSRP is right at $74.99, so this is $15 cheaper. So if you're looking for a collectible route, this might be the way to go. Now, if you're new here, let's talk about how I'm going to rate this whiskey. I use my custom 10-point rating system that I call the lightning counter. It's a rating scale which judges each pour on 5 equal categories: the nose, flavor, mouthfeel, finish, and value, all worth 2 points each. And at the end, we total it up to see where it stacks up against everything else I've reviewed so far this year. At this point, Jack Daniel's 14 is the best score so far, sitting at 9.1. Let's see how close this can get. And if this is something that's up your alley, this will be available starting September 1st in select markets across the United States. But if you're heading out to the Kentucky Bourbon Fest, I believe that's next week, September 4th through the 7th, stop on by the Old Louisville Whiskey Company tent because these will be available for pickup and sales. And Amin is always very generous with his pours as well, so you might just get some good stuff from him at the festival. Let's dive right into this review of this Kentucky series Old Louisville Bourbon. Right off the nose, it's got a little bit of like a bean nuttiness to it to me. Some vanillas, some caramels. A very classic like 78, 10, 12 nose. Not a whole lot of rye spice to it at all. Sweet oak, some vanilla, like I call it a cupcake frosting. My nose is pretty good. Off the first batch, I'm going to say that's a 1.6 on the nose. So 1.6 out of 2. Very classic bourbon, maybe even a slight hint of maybe banana. It's actually got more of like a bean nose to me than I would have gotten out of Bardstown. Very good. Pretty good. Let's see how it tastes. A lot of vanillas and caramels. There's a little bit of a nuttiness there to it. If I didn't know any better, I would have thought that this was beam distilled. At 78, 10, 12. It's not a whole lot of rye spice to it. Some slight earthy tones. I wouldn't necessarily call it tobacco. There's even a little bit of like a grassy tone to it as well. Maybe those earthy tones are more like the walnut that I get from it. Flavor rise, very solid. It's gonna get a 1.5 for me. Not amazing, but you get a lot of vanillas, you get a lot of caramels. I was just looking on the back of the bottle, and for those of you who are bourbon nerds like me, bourbon is aged for a minimum of 8 years in new American oak. Barrels built from stage seasoned and charred to a level 3. So this is a level 3 char, and the barrel entry proof was 120. So they proofed it down from 120 to 100, well, whatever it came out of the barrel. I don't know what the barrel proof was once it was dumped, but proofed down to 100. It's got a little bit more of a kick for a 100 proofer than I would have anticipated. Mouthfeel is pretty creamy. There's a butteriness up front. Then it starts to get a little bit watery towards the back end, but overall not bad. And you can even see some of the legs on the glass sticking to it pretty well. I'm gonna give that mouthfeel a 1.6 as well. So we're sitting at 1.6, 1.5, 1.6 so far. That comes out, if my math is correct, at 4.7 out of 6 here. As for the finish, it doesn't blow your doors off. You get a decent Kentucky hug. It's not amazing, like it's not gonna burn you all the way down, but it's got a little bit of that cinnamon note, but not a whole lot of it. There's not a lot of that rye spice. It's a softer finish, so for those of you who don't love that cinnamon or leather burn on the back end, there's not a whole lot of it. You get some vanillas, you get some oak. Yeah, that is a very solid pour. I'm gonna go with a finish of 1.6 as well. So we've got 1.6, 1.5, 1.6, 1.6. And then we're gonna give that a value score of 1.6 as well. Great value here at $59.99. Now, I would love this to be right at that $50 mark, which would hit some of the other tiers and some of those other bottles that have dropped earlier this year, like Wild Turkey 8-year, which is right at 101 proof, which might beat that slightly in the price-wise, but I think the value is actually very close because this has a little bit more depth and a little bit more flavor than the Wild Turkey 8-year, which I did a review on up there in the top right of your screen. But altogether, 1.6, 1.5, 1.6, 1.6, 1.6, that comes out to a total rating score of 7.9 out of 10. Very good whiskey, very affordable, and if you are a Kentucky fan or you just love the state of Kentucky, it's going to be a great collectible. The one that I have is the second K in Kentucky. I don't know if you can see it right there on the bottle, but overall, very, very good. Now at 7.9 out of 10, not going to be the whiskey or bourbon of the year, but it is certainly a very solid. That is right at that great category, right around 8.0 with a 7.9 score. So a very solid offering from the folks over at Old Louisville Whiskey Company. And a great entryway if you haven't tried anything from Old Louisville. They've got some amazing stuff from this all the way to their single barrels, and this is a bottle your own that I got over there at their warehouse. Amin, a great dude. Go check them out. They've got an amazing experience right there at their shop, and he just bought a new property that should be opening in the next 6 to 10 months. So check them out anytime you're in Louisville. Tell him I sent you, and he'll definitely give you some more whiskey than I think he bargained for. That is certainly the case. A big shout out to the folks over at Old Louisville for providing this bourbon for review. Amin, an amazing dude. So go out there down into Old Louisville and check them out. And now I want to know, who is your best whiskey drinking friend? Tag them below or send this video to them. And if you got any value out of this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like button below if you haven't done so already. I've got to thank you for watching. Also, I've got to thank my Patreon members who are a bunch of loyal followers, part of that whiskey community I mentioned earlier. I call them the Storm Chasers. They're my Patreon members as well as my YouTube members. And you can join for as little as $3 a month in the description below, getting you first access to barrel picks, behind the scenes footage and video, and some other little perks here and there as well. Now, I hope you did enjoy this video, as I mentioned just a few seconds ago. If you haven't hit that like button, what are you waiting for? But if you did enjoy this bourbon review, I do a lot of these throughout the year, and I think that you're really going to enjoy some of those other bourbon reviews right there on the top right of your screen. I leave you the same way I end every video. Remember to drink responsibly. It is always whiskey weather, and I'll see you in that next video. Cheers, y'all.